The Dark Paranormal is supported by BetterHelp. Now, you'll have heard me talk about BetterHelp for a long time, but I don't know that we've ever actually talked about how much people love this service when they use it. But you can check it all out yourself at betterhelp.com/reviews and see those amazing customer reviews in real time. The reviews are updated every day with hundreds of people saying how much they love BetterHelp and how helpful it's been to them. Please visit betterhelp.com/reviews to see for yourself. BetterHelp has an average live therapy session rating of 4.9 out of 5 based on over 1.7 million client session reviews. The feedback from people who've actually used this service speaks for itself. And as more than 6 million people have used BetterHelp globally, it's easy to see why. This consistent feedback from real users make it easy to see why so many people continue to choose BetterHelp. BetterHelp therapists have at least 3 years and 1,000 hours of hands-on experience. They also hold all required education, training, and certifications across a range of mental health specialities. And BetterHelp makes it easy to get started. Answer a few questions, get matched with a therapist based on your needs, and switch therapists at any time if it's not the right fit. See the reviews, see what stands out, and see if BetterHelp is right for you. Visit betterhelp.com, that's betterhelp.com. What if possession isn't always screaming, violence, things coming off walls, and exorcisms, etc.? What if instead it's simply a young girl who insists she's no longer her? In fact, she's somebody else, somebody who's dead. This 3, 6, and 9 series that we're doing in the 10 episodes of season 25, where I said we would take a step away from listener stories to look at the lesser-known cases that I believe deserve far more attention, has already given us Gottlieb and Dietus in our 3rd episode. And today, our second of the 3, 6, 9 series, episode 6, we're going to talk about a young girl and possession. But no, it's not The Exorcist. William Peter Blatty based that novel, as we probably all know, on a real case about a boy named Roland Doe. Not his real name, of course. But I do believe stories like the one you're about to hear were the ones that the researchers paid a lot of attention to when they took that book to film. You see, this particular episode asks one strange question. What if the demonic entity that takes over someone's whole identity never claims to be a demon at all? As always, we can't guarantee to give you any answers, but we will give you all the information you need to make up your own mind on this episode 6, season 25 of The Dark Paranormal. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of season 25 of The Dark Paranormal. Now we have what I think is a very underrated and not very well known case of arguably paranormal possession. And in this case particular, it strikes me as odd that not everyone knows this, even paranormal fans. Because you should know it if you're a paranormal fan. And I don't mean that out of some sort of conceited, you should know this. I mean that out of a way of, if you know Amityville, you should know this. Simply because of how different, how amazing, and how terrifying it truly is. Now, if you're new to the show, and I'm aware there will be many of you, due to a few different promotions going on, then thank you for joining us. Welcome. What we do here is we, obviously, by the title, take a look at the darker side of the paranormal. So you won't find any dead relatives coming to say goodbye in a nice way, or maybe a dead pet jumping up onto the sofa and you can feel their fur up against your legs. Fine, these things can happen, I'm sure. but they're not for us. So, if you go back and look at the back catalogue we have available, which is now over 240 episodes for free, you will see that's what we focus on, but normally with experiences sent to us by our listeners. Now, you can, of course, sign up to our Patreon. Our Patreons allow this show to basically run, and they're kind of co-producers too. Many of their suggestions get put into the show. So all the details about our Patreon are in the show notes, as well as a link where you can submit your own experience to feature on the show. I'll mention at the end some of the perks that being a Patreon can get you, but right now, please lower the lights, make yourself comfortable, and of course, leave your disbelief at the door, as we hear all about the Watseka Wonder, America's strangest possession case, dead inside. Watseka, Illinois, summer 1877. A small Midwestern town near the Indiana border. Quiet streets, wooden houses, families who knew one another from when they were young, but even when they claimed not to know one another particularly well. And inside one of those houses, there is this 13-year-old girl. This 13-year-old girl had begun walking in the night, and she was convinced she wasn't walking alone. This girl's name was Mary Rancy Venum. Everyone called her Rancy. Now, for several nights, she complained that people were entering her bedroom. She'd heard voices calling her name. Sometimes she believed she could feel breath right against her face, even when she was sure there was nobody in the room, let alone close enough to be breathing on her. Her parents had no reason to believe yet that anything truly terrible was happening. But that would all change on the night of the 11th of July, 1877. Because around 6 p.m., Rancy had been working beside her mother when she was asked to help prepare supper, put the plates out, etc. But instead she stood, stopped, and then stared at her mother and said, "Ma, I feel bad. I feel so queer." Then she collapsed. Her body became rigid. She could not be woken by anyone. And she remained in that state for around 5 full hours. Finally, when Rancy did open her eyes, she was terrified. She didn't know what had happened, but she acted as if she did, and not only did she know, she was absolutely petrified by it. Eventually, she did sleep, and the following day, it happened again. Although this time, apparently as her body was unconscious to everybody in the room, Rancy then began to speak. She told everyone in the room that she was somewhere else, somewhere that was beautiful. She said she could see heaven. She even described spirits, angels, and amongst what she could see was two children she recognized. And she should recognize them. It was Laura and Bertie, her own siblings. The only problem being they were both dead. Over the following weeks, those strange states would return, and Rancy would slip away from the world around her and slip into and speak about another world that seemed, at least to her, every bit as real as the one everyone else was in. Then, during September, these episodes of becoming unconscious and talking about other realms and the dead stopped. And for a while, the Venums must have believed that whatever had happened to Rancy had now passed. But it had not. On the 27th of November, Rancy was suddenly seized by a violent abdominal pain. 5 attacks came in that day, then 6. During some of them, witnesses would say her whole body bent backwards with enough force to horrify those in attendance. By December of that very same year, the trances had come back too. But now, there were more of them, sometimes up to 8 per day. And sometimes, according to the surviving accounts that we do have about this whole endeavour, as many as 12. Some would last only an hour, others continued for much of the whole day. At times, Rancy appeared almost peaceful when they were happening. She would talk calmly about the dead, and she would laugh at the living whilst they gathered around her, trying to decide just what had become of their lovely Rancy. Clearly, as you would, with what you believe to be a sick loved one, you call for the doctor. And indeed, doctors were brought in. Dr. Ellen Pitwood, Dr. Jewett. Nobody had an answer that helped. The word catalepsy would be used over and over again. Relatives began speaking openly about insanity. The family's Methodist minister, Reverend B.M. Baker, was said to have contacted a local asylum to see whether Rancy could be admitted. By the beginning of 1878, the Venum family were not trying to solve a paranormal mystery at this point. They were doing the heartbreaking task of trying to decide whether their 13-year-old daughter needed to be taken away to an asylum. And somewhere else in Watseka, a man named Asa B. Roth heard about what was happening with the Venums. For Asa, the story sounded horribly familiar. You see, years earlier, he'd watched something remarkably similar happen to his own daughter. Her name was Mary Roth. And Mary Roth had been born on the 8th of October in the year of 1846. Now, according to her family, Mary's own strange attacks began when she was still an infant. As she grew older, so did the severity of these attacks. By Mary's adolescence, her condition had become so disturbing that a succession of physicians had been consulted. Jesse Bennett, Franklin Blades, but nothing stopped it. Mary would suffer from several periods of both mental and physical disturbances. By 1864, she herself had developed the belief that releasing blood from her body would relieve this unbearable pressure that was mounting inside her head. And on the 16th of July that year, she secretly done that to her own arm. The blood that she lost was so much that she became unconscious. However, Mary survived. And what happened afterwards became part of the Roth family history long before Rancy Venum had ever entered their lives. During her recovery, Mary was said to have fallen into these altered states in which she seemed capable of knowing things she couldn't know. One local newspaper editor, A.G. Smith, later claimed that he personally took part in an experiment in which a sealed letter was placed in front of Mary whilst her eyes were heavily bandaged. Mary supposedly not only identified a letter had been placed in front of her, but also who had signed it. Now, whether that was clairvoyance, cleverness, suggestion, or simply a story invented by a child, it's impossible to know. But what is known is that Mary's attacks would continue. And on the 5th of July, 1865, with her parents away in Peoria, Mary ate breakfast, lay down, suffered what witnesses recognized as another of her familiar fits, and died. She was 18 years old. Her family may have buried her, but Asa Roth never buried what he believed had happened to her. In the years after Mary's death, the Roths embraced spiritualism, the 19th century belief that the dead could communicate with the living and, under certain circumstances, even use them as a vessel. So when Asa heard that another girl in Watseka was collapsing into trances, seeing spirits, talking to the dead, he didn't hear the same thing that Rancy's frightened relatives were hearing. And he didn't hear about a girl who needed to go to an asylum. He heard something else, something he recognized. He heard Mary. Or at least something close to Mary. Something close enough that it was worth intervening. Now, the Roths and the Venums were not complete strangers. Years earlier, when the Venum family had first moved into Watseka in 1871, they'd lived only a short distance from Asa Roth. The surviving account insists there had been some contact, a brief social visit, a speaking acquaintance between the men, nothing more. Though whatever the truth of that was, Asa now approached Thomas Venum and persuaded him to postpone sending his daughter to the asylum. He knew someone, he thought, could help. That person's name was E. Winchester Stevens. Stevens came from Janesville, Wisconsin, and described as a doctor, but he was also a mesmerist and a spiritualist. On the afternoon of the 31st of January, 1878, around 4 p.m., Stevens entered the Venum house, with Asa Roth beside him. The girl waiting for them near the stove barely resembled the mild child her parents remembered. You see, Rancy was sat curled into a chair. She was hostile, watchful. Her manner was difficult and unpredictable. And when Stevens began speaking with her, she told him she was not Rancy Venum at all. She was Katrina Hogan. She was 63 years old. She was German. And then, while they watched, Katrina disappeared, and another personality stepped in. This one was male. His name, she said, was Willie Canning, a young man, a dead young man. Her behavior altered with the identity, her voice, her temperament. Even the way the girl dealt with Stevens seemed to change, at one point questioning him rather than answering him. Rancy's parents broke down. Their daughter was physically sitting in front of them, yet personality after personality was appearing to step forward from inside of her, while Rancy herself seemed to be moving further and further away. Around 5:30, her body suddenly became rigid and she took to the floor. Stevens grabbed hold of her hands. He began what he called magnetic treatment. And during that session, he made a suggestion that would change everything that followed. If these other personalities insisted on taking control of Rancy's body, he told her perhaps she should choose a better one. A good spirit, a pure spirit, someone intelligent, someone benevolent. Rancy looked like she was searching amongst the figures she thought surrounded her. Then she said one of them was willing to step forward. Stevens asked, who? The answer was simple. Mary Roth. Asa Roth was sitting in the room. His daughter had been dead for almost 13 years. And now she was inside the body of another family's 13-year-old child. Her name had just been spoken. Over the following days, Katrina Hogan disappeared, as did Willie Canning. The angry, disturbed behavior faded along with them. And in its place came somebody quiet, somebody mild, polite, someone who seemed almost relieved to be there, and someone who no longer appeared to know who the Venums were. Her parents would speak to her, and she would look at them as if they were strangers. They would repeatedly tell her she was at home, and she would insist she was not, and that she wanted to go to her real home, to her real family, the Roths. Then, about a week after Stephen's visit, Anne Roth approached the Venum house with Mary's older sister, Minerva Alter. Rancy watched from inside the house, according to Stephen's account, looking out the window as she watched the two women approaching from a distance. Before they'd even entered the house, she was becoming excited. She identified from a distance Anne as her mother, despite never seeing the woman before as Rancy. She knew Minerva was her sister, and then used a name that belonged to Mary's childhood, Nev. That was a private form of Minerva's name, one that the dead Mary had used many a time before, 13 years ago, before her death. A secret form of Minerva's name used as a nickname by Mary only between the two of them. Obviously, the last time that Minerva had heard this used was over 13 years ago, before her sister had died. And now she was hearing it again, out of the mouth of a perfectly alive 13-year-old. There's not much you can do about the money you have now, but if you want to do something about the money you could have tomorrow, Acorns wants to help. And with the Acorns Potential screen, you can find out what your money is capable of. Acorns is a smart way to give your money a chance to grow. It's easy. You can sign up in minutes and start automatically investing your spare money, even if all you have is spare change. Because Acorns grows with you. Whether you're just starting out or thinking about settling down, Acorns supports your big and small goals across every life stage. And the Acorns Potential screen shows you the power of compounding and how your money can grow over time. Plus, you can quickly adjust how much you're investing every day, every week, or month to make sure you're building toward your goals. Acorns is an all-in-one. No more finance apps cluttering up your phone. With Acorns, you can invest, save, and give your money a chance to grow in one trusted place. I've had and used many financial applications, but the specific thing about the Acorns app I love is the potential screen. Of all the apps I've used, it gives me such a clear picture of the opportunities for my cash to grow. So sign up now, and Acorns will boost your new account with a $5 bonus investment. Join the over 14 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/darkparanormal or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsements. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Potential subject to various factors such as customers' accounts, age, and investment settings. Does not include Acorns fees. Results do not predict or represent the performance of any Acorns portfolio. Investment results will vary. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/darkparanormal. I'll be the first to admit I am not the most organised man in the world, especially when it comes to organising a dinner party. There's usually always a missing ingredient, and normally it's the main ingredient, which then leads to a rushed supermarket trip to pick the best of the worst that's been left out. A problem that would simply not exist if I was stateside and able to use Omaha steaks. With the ability to get fresh Omaha steaks and keep them frozen in my freezer, I would never have this danger again. With things like their legendary steaks, their flavour-filled burgers, and seafood and chicken, it's like having your own trusted butcher and gourmet food shop right at home. And you may think, can frozen delivery be this good? Well, yes. Omaha steaks are known for their meticulous aging process and vacuum-sealed individual packaging. And if you've never tried them before, start perfectly with the Burger Perfection Flight. The Burger Perfection Flight includes 4 pure ground versions of the following meats: filet mignon burgers, New York strip burgers, ribeye burgers, brisket burgers, and sirloin burgers. Try the Burger Perfection Flight at omahasteaks.com today. That's 20 premium steak burgers for just $79.99. And get $35 off with the promo code BEEF. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code BEEF for $35 off at checkout. Terms apply, see the site for details. When the two women were settled in the house, the girl greeted them as family. There was no hesitation, there was no caution. She didn't act as a 13-year-old would in front of people she realistically had never met before. She embraced the women whose daughter had died 12 years earlier, and repeatedly told them she was that daughter. And from that moment, it became increasingly important and desperate for her to leave the Venum house. Finally, the families both agreed. And on the 11th of February 1878, Thomas and Lorinda Venum allowed their 13-year-old daughter to go and live with Asa and Anne Roth. Not as an experiment, not temporarily or for an afternoon, not even for an observation or to help them mourn their over-decade-long loss. No. They allowed Rancy to move into the dead girl's family home as the dead girl. And before she went, somebody asked how long she intended to stay. The answer was both spookily confident and strangely specific. The angels will let me stay till sometime in May. So, Mary Roth, 13 years dead, went home. At least, that's what the Roths believed, and apparently the Venums. Inside their house, the transformation allegedly became fully complete. Rancy would answer to the name Mary. She would call Asa and Anne her parents. She would treat Mary's own relatives better than her actual relatives. In fact, when Thomas Venum came to visit, the daughter he'd spent his life raising looked at him like an outsider. Rancy's brother, Henry, received much the same treatment. But people who had belonged to Mary's life, people from before Rancy had even been born, were greeted differently. For example, a woman named Mrs. Waggoner visited. The girl called her Mrs. Lord, because that was the name Mary had known this lady by before she got married. Then Mrs. Parker came, an old neighbour of the Roths, and the girl recognised her immediately. She also began talking about the days when Mary and Minerva had visited Mrs. Parker's house to sing. Mrs. Parker remembered. So did Minerva. The family were no longer dealing with a girl claiming to be Mary. They all started to believe this was in fact Mary. So Asa Roth started testing her. One evening in late March, whilst the girl was out of the room, he quietly asked his wife Anne to find something that had belonged to their daughter. So Anne went away and came back with a velvet headdress Mary had worn before she died. It was left out without explanation. When Rancy, or Mary, returned, she reportedly recognized the thing immediately, and then notified her second parents when it was she'd worn the item, and was correct. Then she asked for a box containing old letters and possessions. Amongst them was a piece of tatting. The girl picked it out, said it was hers, and there were memories beyond Watseka too. In 1857, for example, the Roth family had travelled to Texas. Rancy Venum had not even been born by this point. Yet, when Asa asked Mary about the journey, she reportedly recalled the crossing of the Red River, encounters with indigenous people along the route, and the Reeder girls, people who had travelled with them. Every answer tightened this emotional hold of the situation. The Roths had buried a daughter at 18. But now another girl was sitting at their table, sleeping beneath their roof, and speaking about pieces of their dead daughter's childhood as if they were her own. For them, grief had apparently started to reverse. And strangest of all, the sick girl at the center of it was getting better. The violent attacks that had terrified the Venums largely disappeared. She ate, she worked around the house, she socialized with friends. She seemed physically stronger, mentally calmer. Whatever it was that seemed to be having such an impact on Rancy Venum seemed to be curing her as Mary Roth. On the 19th of February, Asa wrote to Stevens describing how happy she seemed and how completely she behaved as Mary rather than Rancy. Minerva wrote about the same transformation. Inside the Roth household, there was very little doubt about what was happening. Mary had indeed come home from the dead. And then February became March, March became April, and April became May. The month the girl had predicted from the very beginning. By early May, Mary started telling the family that soon Rancy would be back. Now, for the Roths, of course, this meant facing something almost grotesquely cruel. They'd already lost Mary once. Now they had to prepare to lose her again. On the 7th of May, Anne Roth was alone with the girl when something changed. That familiar expression vanished, and suddenly the child in front of her didn't seem confident and loving anymore. She seemed frightened, confused, and afraid. She had no idea where she was, and she wanted her mother. Not Anne, but Lorinda Venum, and she wanted to go home. For several minutes, Rancy appeared to have returned, but then she vanished again and Mary came back. The warning had been given, though, and 2 weeks later, on the morning of the 21st of May, 1878, Asa wrote to Stevens. Mary, he said, believed she would leave around 11 p.m. That night the household prepared itself. Neighbours were told to say goodbye. Gifts were readied for Rancy for her return, the girl they expected to inherit when Mary departed. And around the time this all happened, while the girl was with Minerva, the change began. The affection towards her sister, or Mary's sister, disappeared. The familiarity disappeared too. People Rancy would have known for months if she was pretending, or if the Roths were indeed correct, for a lifetime if she was Mary, were suddenly strangers. Pa and Ma became Mr. and Mrs. Roth. The house that had been the backdrop to this entire scene became somewhere she didn't recognize. Asa took Rancy back to the Venums. And as soon as Rancy entered the house, she saw her parents. And this time, she ran to them. The same little girl that had looked right through them for months now recognized them immediately. Rancy Venum had come home, and Mary Roth was gone. The local Watseka Republican later reported that the returned girl appeared healthy and happy, noticing changes around the house and town that had occurred whilst she'd been away. She behaved like someone who'd been waking from a very, very long sleep, or someone who'd returned from a long, long trip. Now, what should have happened next if this were a simple Victorian horror story is that the illness returned, but it didn't. On the 9th of July, 1878, Lorinda Venum wrote that her daughter remained physically and mentally well. For the first couple of weeks, she admitted, Rancy seemed almost dreamlike, altered. But overall, the family believed she'd improved. Then, on the 16th of July, something happened that is one of the reasons the Watseka story survives at all. Both families gathered together. Asa and Anne Roth, Thomas and Lorinda Venum. Stephen's written account of everything that had happened was read aloud in their presence. and when it was finished, all 4 parents signed a declaration confirming to the best of their knowledge the story was true and accurate. The dead girl's parents signed it, but so did Lawrence's. They publicly endorsed the claim that their own daughter, had spent months believing herself to be Mary Roth, and that she had returned to them well, as in better than when she left them. Years had passed. Rancy grew up. She married George Binning. The catastrophic period of attacks that had once brought her family to the edge of institutionalizing her never returned in the same sustained form. There were later stories of Mary briefly appearing again, particularly around contact with the Roth family. But the great episode was over. Mary Roth had apparently returned to Watseka. She stayed until May and left exactly when she said she would. Either that or something inside Rancy Venum had done precisely the same thing. Now, there are several reasons to be cautious about what we've just heard. Stevens was already a committed spiritualist when he entered the Venum house. Asa Roth believed in spiritualism also. These families had lived near one another for years. And once Rancy moved into the Roth house, she was basically surrounded by Mary's relatives who were constantly telling her she was Mary. They may have been reminding her of memories, and when I say reminding, I mean giving her information regarding. William James described the whole case as an extreme case of apparent possession, but in the context of divided consciousness rather than as proof that Mary had returned from the dead. Richard Hodgson had later interviewed surviving witnesses and concluded that the events had occurred substantially as described, but still acknowledged how much suggestion surrounded the entire thing. Although several details continue to resist an easy ending if the original accounts are accurate. For example, the way the girl recognized Anne and Minerva before they entered the house, calling Minerva Nervy, or knowing Mrs. Lord by her maiden name. Remembering singing visits with Mrs. Parker, identifying Mary's headdress, and yes, recalling pieces of a journey made years before Rancy was born. Of course, none of these things prove that a dead girl came home. But neither can we now recreate the rooms, conversations, or moments in which they happen to discover exactly what happened, where that information came from. So what we are left with is one of the strangest recorded identity cases of the 19th century. A living child became somebody else, literally. A grieving family believed their dead daughter had been returned to them, so much so the parents of the other physical child passed her over to continue living as Mary. And yet months later, the girl who was sick and about to be institutionalized returned home better, safe, well. And arguably the most bizarre thing of all, the girl herself told everyone when Mary would be leaving, sometime in May. And on the 21st of May, 1878, Mary left. Maybe Mary Roth did come home. Maybe Rancy Venum became Mary because frightened adults had surrounded her unknowingly, teaching her how to do so. But from the other side of the room, there may have been no visible difference at all. A 13-year-old girl looks through the woman who gave birth to her without any recognition, yet another woman walks through the door, and suddenly the girl smiles as if she's known her all her life and been waiting almost 13 years to come into contact with her again. Please do let me know what you think are the theories, suggestions, or possible reasons behind this, one of the most intriguing and disturbing cases that people could rightly call possession. And so it's there that we'll wrap up the Watseka wonder, as she's known. this, for me, is not so much terrifying out your skin as it is disturbing. And I don't just mean through Rancy becoming Mary, I mean every part of it, from the fact of the alleged possession to the fact her own parents were seemingly so okay with letting her go and live with another family, given the conditions. It doesn't seem feasible at all today that somebody could claim to be the dead child of somebody else and their family would not only go along with it, but allow that family to let their child live with them. It would seem even more far-fetched, thinking about it rationally, that the family of the dead girl would want to take this other child in. So you can only imagine just how convinced they all were. But the main reason I wanted this bizarre encounter to be included in our 369 trilogy of the paranormal events I want people to know more of is the fact it's one of maybe 2 or 3 events in history that have sworn testimony, signed, etc., to what went on around that time. And I'm not too sure exactly what more those people involved could have done to prove that what they saw and what they believed to them was the absolute truth. Maybe it is. I certainly think something is there. And I say that because I think the interesting parts which people don't really focus on, including myself, because the information simply isn't there, are the first few walk-ins, if you will, that take place about the German lady and about the gentleman that stepped through, and how Rancy seemed to articulate those characteristics. That to me does speak to an idea she may indeed have been some sort of vessel, a walk-in, a phrase which we don't hear too much about these days, but was quite popular maybe a decade ago. So yes, please do let me know what you think. Now, in regards to that, you can send any emails regarding theories, etc. to contact@thedarkparanormal.com. In the links in the show notes, there's a link where you can send your own experiences, which indeed may make their way onto the main show or form part of our minisode series, or indeed part of our Dark Bite series that we produce each and every week of the year for our Patreon team. Now, I said I'd mention the perks of becoming a patron at the end of the show, so indeed I will. If you see in the show notes, there are links there. One of them is for our Patreon. You can have a free week trial of any tier of your choice. We have 3 tiers. 1, simply get rid of the adverts, because who likes adverts? 2 is more where you get early releases, so everything that's on the main feed will go to you first, both ad-free and before everyone else. And our 3rd tier will get you all of the below, and also you get 2 additional shows, 30 minutes in length each, every week of the year, so an hour's worth of extra programming, if you will, solely for that tier. They're made up of 2 episodes. One is called Dark Bites, where we take the shorter experiences that we receive, which are too short for a main show and too short for a minisode or a minisode. And also we do a video, which is basically me, like this, direct to camera, unedited, where I discuss theories that have either been sent in or my own theories around the episodes we've covered. And it's a sort of peek behind how my brain works about these ideas and theories, because people have asked how I come to certain conclusions, and I often can't give an answer, because it's a very almost stream of, I wouldn't say consciousness, because that would give it far too much credibility, but people do seem to enjoy me talking about those, so that's on there too. And as I say, you can get a free week trial by clicking on the link below. But I'd like to seriously thank each and every one of you for choosing to spend your time with me here today on the Dark Paranormal. And until next week, stay safe and take care.